The cathedral was so crowded, it felt like the entire city had come to a stop. Rain hit the stained glass, streaking the colors across 1,000 faces. Black, white, rich, poor, politicians and janitors, all pressed together in silence. In front, a mahogany casket gleamed beneath golden light. On the end of the third row, a frail white woman clutched an old boarding pass so tight it crumpled in her hand. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Some recognized her, a famous doctor, maybe, but no one dared approach. An old black man, taller than most, but stooped with age, walked to the podium. Every step trembled, but he kept his head high. His suit was dark and crisp, though his hands shook as he gripped the wood. He stared out, not at the crowd, but at the woman with the boarding pass. For a second, nobody breathed. The cathedral lights flickered over senators, teachers, children in Sunday best, but the old man and the woman seemed alone in their own world. He swallowed, searching for words that mattered. His voice, when it came, was low but heavy, carrying through the marble arches. "I was there," he said. "I know the real story." He looked back at the white woman, her eyes red and swollen, the boarding pass still pressed to her chest. "This is the story you've never heard. The story that changed everything for both of us. And maybe for you, too." September 1985. Chicago O'Hare pulsed with early morning chaos. Flight announcements echoing, coffee steaming, businessmen in sharp suits barking into brick-sized phones. A young black man, maybe 30, leaned against his worn duffel, checking his first-class boarding pass like he was afraid it might disappear. His suit was new, midnight blue, but the tag inside still itched at his neck. He kept his chin up, but every glance from the gate agent, every curious stare from white travelers reminded him he was the only one like him in this line. His mother's voice played in his head, as steady as his heartbeat. "Be twice as good. Work twice as hard. You belong here, son." But the truth was, he felt the weight of every eye. Across the waiting area, a young white woman sat in a plastic chair, bent forward, hands cupped over her belly. 8 months pregnant, hair a tangled mess, eyes swollen and rimmed red. She rocked back and forth, whispering to herself. On her lap, a battered coach ticket. She stared at it like she could will it to become something better. People hurried past. Some glanced at her and looked away. A businessman with a Rolex frowned and took the next seat over. An older couple pretended not to see her at all. No one stopped. The black man hesitated, ticket gripped so hard his knuckles ached. But every step he'd ever taken, every lesson he'd learned about kindness and risk, echoed in his chest. For a long minute, he stood at the edge, watching her world fold in on itself. Then he took a breath, stepped forward, and closed the space between them. He stopped a few feet away, careful not to startle her. She looked up, startled anyway, fear flashing in her tired blue eyes before she masked it behind a polite smile. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his voice gentle, calm, the kind of tone his mother used when soothing children. "Are you okay?" She tried to answer, but her lips just trembled. He saw the tears, the way she pressed her hands to her belly as if to steady herself. "I'm fine," she whispered, even as her whole body shook. "You don't have to pretend," he said quietly. "How far along are you?" Her guard wavered. 8 months. Due in 3 weeks. They said I shouldn't be flying, but... She trailed off, staring at the ugly gray carpet. "I had to leave. My family. They kicked me out. They found out about..." She hesitated, glancing at his skin, then back down. "The baby's father. He was black. They couldn't stand it. They said I'd shamed them. I spent every dollar just to get this far." His jaw clenched, anger flickering behind his careful calm. He knelt so he could look her in the eyes. "You don't deserve that. Not you. Not your baby." She shook her head, wiping her face. "I'm not asking for pity. I don't know how I'm going to make it." For a second, the sounds of the airport faded. Just two strangers, stranded in a place that didn't want either of them. The gate agent called for first-class boarding. He glanced at his ticket, then at her battered pass, then back at her tired, hopeful face. Without a word, he pressed his own ticket into her hand. "Take it," he said. "First class. It's yours now." She froze. "No, I can't. I can't take that from you." He shook his head, voice steady. "You can. You will. You need it more than I do." A sob broke from her lips. "Why would you do this?" He just smiled. "Because kindness shouldn't cost you everything. Because my mother taught me to lift up someone when the world tries to push them down." Her hands trembled as she took the ticket. The boarding agent stared, surprised, but didn't argue. She walked to the gate, wiping her eyes, pausing to look back at him once, her face raw with gratitude and disbelief. He took her old seat, last row, middle, squeezed between a snoring salesman and a crying toddler. He felt the weight of the sacrifice and the silent questions from everyone around him. He'd done the right thing, but he knew the world would never make it easy. As the plane taxied for takeoff, he watched her in first class, watched the way the flight attendants fussed over her, watched hope return to her face. He thought about the father she'd lost, the family she'd left, the future she was running toward. And as the plane lifted into the gray Chicago sky, he felt, for the first time in a long while, like maybe his kindness could still matter. The plane leveled off above the clouds, city lights fading beneath the dawn. Marcus pressed his forehead to the window, watching mist trail along the glass. In the distance, the first rays of sunlight caught the silver of the engine. The old man beside him was already asleep, mouth open. Across the aisle, a young mother struggled with a baby who wouldn't settle. But Marcus wasn't thinking about the discomfort or the noise. He kept seeing the white woman's face, the way she'd looked back at him, her fear, her gratitude. He tried to lose himself in a book, but the words blurred. Every now and then, a flight attendant came by offering drinks or snacks. Nobody paid him much mind. In first class, though, he caught glimpses of her, a glass of orange juice, a blanket draped over her shoulders, the kindness of strangers who had no idea what she'd given up just to survive this flight. Marcus was glad she was safe, but something gnawed at him. A few hours in, a flight attendant appeared, her voice quiet. "Are you Marcus?" He looked up, surprised. "The woman in first class. She asked if you could come up. Says she needs to talk to you." He blinked. Nobody ever asked for him like this. Not on a plane. Not in a place like this. "Of course," he said, rising, weaving down the cramped aisle, aware of the stairs as he moved toward first class. She was waiting by the galley, hands clenched tight. Her face was pale, a sheen of sweat across her brow. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. He nodded. "Are you okay?" "Not really," she said, and her voice wobbled. "I need to tell you something. I'm sorry to drag you into it, but you're the only person I can trust." Marcus listened as she told her story, voice shaking with each word. Her baby's father, Jerome, hadn't just been a worker. He'd been a union leader, fighting for equal pay, better conditions. He'd been targeted, threatened, finally killed in an accident everyone knew wasn't accidental. "He kept files," she said, her hands twisting. Documents, names, numbers, payoffs, threats, everything. He thought he could bring them down. She swallowed. Before he died, he gave them to me. I've been hiding them ever since. My family is involved. My father runs the company that had him killed. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He looked at her, truly looked. She was trembling, tears shining in her eyes, but her jaw was set with a kind of desperate strength. "I can't go to the police," she said. "I can't trust anyone. But I heard about a journalist in Detroit, a black man, Malik Johnson. Jerome said if anything happened, find him." She pressed a slip of paper into Marcus's palm, her handwriting cramped and shaky. "I was going to fly to Detroit, but they're watching me. They know I'm pregnant. They know I'm running." Marcus wanted to speak, but all he could do was nod, feeling the burden land heavy on his shoulders. "Why me?" he asked, voice low. She looked at him, eyes wet. "Because you're the first person in months who's been kind to me without asking for something in return. I don't know what else to do." The plane jolted, a patch of turbulence. She clung to the armrest, knuckles white. "If something happens to me, if I don't make it, promise you'll get those files to Malik. Promise me you won't let them get away with it." Marcus took her hand, squeezed it gently. "I promise. I swear." Another jolt. The intercom crackled, instructing passengers to return to their seats. She hugged her belly, closed her eyes, breathing fast. "I'm so scared," she whispered. Marcus wanted to say it would be all right, but he didn't want to lie. Back in coach, Marcus clutched the paper. He felt every eye in the cabin. He felt the danger, the weight of a secret that could topple powerful men. As the plane descended into Seattle, Marcus knew this was no longer just a flight. He'd crossed into a different kind of journey, one where kindness wasn't safe, but it was the only way forward. The wheels touched down in Seattle just after noon. Rain streaked the windows as passengers scrambled for overhead bags and cell phones. Marcus waited in his cramped seat, eyes on the front of the plane, heart pounding. He watched as she was helped off first, her steps slow, one hand pressed protectively to her belly. He didn't move until the crowd thinned, then made his way down the jetway, clutching the slip of paper she'd given him, the weight of her secret burning in his pocket. In the baggage claim, he caught sight of her again. She looked small under the harsh lights, hunched over, backpack heavy on her shoulder. He approached cautiously. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice low, watching for anyone watching them. She nodded, but her eyes were wild with fear. "They're here," she whispered. "I saw a man from my father's company near the exit. I can't go home. If they find the files, if they find me." Her hands shook as she fumbled for a set of keys. "I'm supposed to meet my sister, but I can't risk leading them to her." Marcus's mind raced. "We'll find somewhere safe. My friend's cousin runs a clinic in the Central District. No questions, no records. You can rest there." She hesitated, then nodded, desperation outweighing pride. Together, they slipped out a side exit, blending with a group of tourists. He hailed a cab, gave the driver the address with a tip, and settled into the back seat beside her, scanning the streets for signs of a tail. At the clinic, the waiting room was warm, full of the smells of coffee and disinfectant. An older black nurse gave them a wary look, but waved them through when Marcus explained. The woman collapsed onto a padded bench, face drawn, breath coming in short gasps. "I think something's wrong," she whispered, one hand pressed to her side. The nurse called for help, and in minutes a doctor appeared, a black woman with calm eyes and steady hands. She checked the woman's vitals, listened, then nodded. "You're having contractions," she said. "But we can keep you and the baby safe." While the woman was checked in, Marcus called the number on the slip of paper. Malik Johnson answered, his voice brisk. "You have what?" Marcus explained, lowering his voice, his eyes darting to the door. "I have evidence. Names, payments, everything. The woman's not safe." Malik was silent for a beat. "Meet me tonight. I'll bring backup. And be careful. They don't want this coming out." After hanging up, Marcus paced the corridor, fear and adrenaline twisting in his gut. Outside, a dark sedan crawled past the clinic, slowing just enough to make his skin crawl. Inside, the woman's sister arrived, a tired, fierce-looking woman who hugged her and took the keys. "I'll get the files," she promised, eyes shining with determination. Night fell. The clinic buzzed with quiet activity. Marcus never sat, checking every window, every face. When Malik finally appeared, trench coat soaked from the rain, Marcus handed over the files. "This is all of it," he said. Malik's eyes widened as he scanned the documents. "You've just made some powerful people very nervous," he said quietly. "Stay close. It's about to get dangerous." By sunrise, the city was humming with rumors. News trucks gathered outside government buildings. The clinic's TV flashed headlines: "City corruption exposed." Evidence of murder and bribery in top construction firms. Malik Johnson's name scrolled across the bottom, his article everywhere. The story exploded. Secret payoffs, forged inspections, police on the take, and black workers targeted for daring to rise. Photos of the murdered union leader, Jerome, filled the screens, along with the first public image of the woman who'd carried his child through danger. The white woman, her name now public, sat in the clinic's dim recovery room, cradling her newborn. The baby had come early but healthy, fierce in her tiny cries. The sister stood guard by the door. Marcus watched over both, exhausted, mind racing with what-ifs. Police cruisers idled outside the clinic, half for protection, half to monitor. The city felt like a pressure cooker about to burst. The fallout was swift. Jerome's murder was reclassified as a homicide. Several city officials were arrested. Contractors were dragged before grand juries. For the first time, headlines called it what it was: a conspiracy against black workers, a system designed to punish those who dared to demand better. The woman's family responded with fury. Her father, a pillar of Chicago's business world, disowned her on the evening news. He called her a traitor, blamed her for destroying the family's name. She wept, but didn't waver. "Jerome died for the truth," she told reporters. "I won't let his story die with him, or let my daughter grow up ashamed of who she is." Malik's article swept the country. Civil rights leaders rallied. Marches grew. The mayor's office was forced to respond, pledging new oversight, promising protection for whistleblowers and black professionals who had long worked in fear. In the middle of the storm, Marcus received a letter. It was from his own supervisor at Ford, asking him not to return to work until things cooled down. He read the lines twice. It was clear. He'd become a problem for them. He met with the woman and her sister one last time in the clinic. The baby, named Amara, slept curled against her mother's chest. Marcus looked at the tiny girl, her skin a perfect blend of her parents', and felt something like hope breaking through all the pain. "She's going to know the truth," the woman promised, "about her father, about you, about what justice costs." The next day, Marcus left Chicago behind. He kept a low profile as the city changed around him. The officials who'd profited from suffering were held accountable. Black workers saw promotions, new protections, and the beginnings of real respect. The city didn't heal overnight, but the story, one act of kindness on a plane, rippled through the streets, changing everything in ways nobody could have imagined. The cathedral bells tolled once, echoing down Chicago's gray streets as the mourners filed out into the afternoon drizzle. Inside, the white woman with the boarding pass stood in the center aisle, her hands trembling, the faded slip of paper pressed to her heart. The city was quieter now, but she could still feel eyes on her. People who remembered the headlines, the protests, the way one story had brought an entire city to its knees. Marcus remained by the casket, shoulders straight despite the years. His suit hung looser now, streaked at the collar with age, but his eyes were bright. He watched the woman approach, watched her struggle to find her voice in front of so many. She stopped, took a breath, and looked right at him. She spoke softly at first, but the silence made every word carry. Most of you knew me as a doctor, or as the woman who brought down City Hall. But the truth is, none of that would have happened if it weren't for one man's kindness, a man most of you never met. Her eyes glistened with tears, and she lifted the boarding pass for all to see. 40 years ago, a stranger gave up his first-class seat to a woman who didn't deserve it, who was lost and desperate. He didn't ask my name. He didn't ask what color my child would be. He just saw someone who needed help and did the right thing. She turned to Marcus. I didn't know then how much danger he was putting himself in. I didn't know what it meant to choose courage when the world tells you to look away. But I know now. Her voice steadied. He changed my life. He changed my daughter's life. He changed this city. A hush fell over the crowd as a young woman stepped forward. Amara, grown tall, her father's eyes shining in her face. She embraced her mother, then Marcus. Because you risked everything for us, Amara said quietly, I became the woman I am. I became a doctor, so I could help others, the way you helped us. My father never got to see justice, but you made sure his story wasn't forgotten. Marcus smiled, tears welling. The grief in the room was heavy, but so was the sense of hope. People reached out, shook his hand, thanked him for his courage. Reporters snapped photos. Children asked their parents who he was, and the parents told them. A good man, a brave man, a man who stood up when it mattered. Outside, as the crowd thinned, the city seemed gentler. Neighbors talked. Old wounds were named and remembered. A story that began with loss had ended in unity. The last image was Marcus and Amara walking out together under the cathedral arches, rain on their faces. The world forever changed because one man believed kindness could fight back against hate.